When the wife revealed the evidence in court, the millionaire husband and his mistress froze, seeing who the final witness was. Sarah Bennett's hands trembled as she placed the final candle on the anniversary dinner table. Tonight marked 5 years since she'd married Thomas Harrison, the man who'd transformed from a struggling real estate agent into one of Connecticut's most successful property developers. She smoothed her new blue dress, bought specially for the occasion, and checked her phone again. No messages from Thomas. He's probably just caught up at work, she whispered to herself, but the knot in her stomach tightened. Something had been off lately. Thomas was spending more and more time at the office, coming home late smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't hers. While adjusting the roses in the centerpiece, Sarah froze. Through the partially open window, she could hear Thomas's voice from the garden. "The plan is working perfectly. She doesn't suspect a thing," he laughed. "No, don't worry about Sarah. She's too busy grading papers to notice anything." Sarah's heart pounded. Before she could process what she'd heard, Thomas walked in, quickly ending his call. "Oh, you're home early," he said, barely glancing at the candlelit table. "It's our anniversary," Sarah reminded him softly. "Right, of course." He checked his watch. "Listen, I can't stay long. There's an emergency meeting with investors." Sarah's throat tightened. "On a Friday night? Money doesn't sleep, sweetheart." He kissed her cheek absently. "Victoria's handling the paperwork, but I need to be there." Victoria Palmer, the company's financial director. Tall, sophisticated, and everything Sarah wasn't. She'd been spending a lot of time at their house lately, always perfectly made up, always watching Thomas with those knowing eyes. As if summoned by Sarah's thoughts, Thomas's phone buzzed with a message. His face lit up as he read it. "I have to go," he said, already heading for the door. "But the dinner?" Sarah gestured helplessly at the table she'd spent hours preparing. "We'll celebrate tomorrow, promise." The door closed behind him before she could respond. Sarah sank into a chair, fighting back tears. Her fingers brushed against something under the table, a small shopping bag she hadn't noticed before. Inside was a jewelry store receipt for a diamond necklace worth more than her yearly teacher's salary. Her birthday had passed months ago, and Christmas was far off. The doorbell rang, making her jump. Victoria stood there, looking flawless in a designer dress. "Sarah, darling, I was just dropping off some contracts for Thomas to sign." Her eyes swept over Sarah's dress and the romantic table setting. "Oh, is this a special occasion? Our anniversary?" Sarah managed. "Is it? How sweet." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. She opened her expensive handbag, and several photos fluttered to the floor. "Oh, clumsy me." Sarah bent to help gather them. Her hand froze mid-reach. The photos showed Thomas and Victoria at what looked like a luxury resort, his arms around her waist, both of them laughing. "Oops," Victoria snatched the photos away. "Wrong set of documents. These are from our business trip to the Bahamas last month." "Thomas said he told you about it?" Sarah's world spun. Last month, Thomas had said he was at a real estate convention in Chicago. "I'm sure it just slipped his mind." Victoria purred. "He's been so busy lately. But you understand, don't you? After all, supporting your husband's success is what a good wife does." As Victoria sashayed away, Sarah rushed to the bathroom, suddenly overwhelmed by nausea. She'd been feeling sick every morning for the past week, but had attributed it to stress. Now, as she splashed cold water on her face, a terrifying thought struck her. She couldn't be pregnant. Not now. Not when her perfect life was starting to crack like thin ice beneath her feet. But deep down, Sarah knew. Everything was about to change, and the carefully constructed world she shared with Thomas was going to shatter into a million pieces. Sarah stared at the pregnancy test, her hands shaking. 2 pink lines, clear and undeniable. After 5 minutes of frozen silence, her phone rang, startling her back to reality. "Hello," she answered, her voice wavering. "Mrs. Harrison?" The voice was female, unfamiliar. "Check your husband's home office tonight, 3rd drawer of his desk. You need to see what's there." "Who is this?" The line went dead. Sarah paced the bathroom floor, debating what to do. Anonymous calls were suspicious, but after Victoria's photos and Thomas's strange behavior, could she ignore it? At midnight, with Thomas still not home, Sarah used her spare key to enter his office. The 3rd drawer was locked. She almost gave up until she noticed the key hidden behind a family photo. one where Thomas was actually smiling at her. Inside the drawer, she found stacks of documents, bank transfers, shell companies, properties she'd never heard of. Her signature appeared on several papers, but she'd never seen them before. Page after page revealed millions of dollars moving through accounts she didn't recognize. "What are you doing in here?" Sarah jumped. Thomas stood in the doorway, Victoria right behind him. Both still in business clothes, though it was well past midnight. "These papers," Sarah held them up, her voice stronger than she felt. "This is my signature, but I never signed them. You're going through my private documents?" Thomas's face hardened. "That's a new low, even for you." "Even for me? I'm your wife, and someone is forging my signature." Victoria stepped forward. "Thomas, maybe we should just tell her." "Tell me what?" Sarah looked between them. "About us," Victoria smiled. "We've been together for 2 years now. Did you really think Thomas was working late all those nights?" The room spun. Sarah grabbed the desk for support. 2 years? "Sarah," Thomas sighed, "let's be practical. You're a small-town teacher. You were fine when we were struggling, but you don't fit into my world anymore. Victoria understands business, high society, the life I need to lead." "I'm pregnant," Sarah blurted out. The silence that followed was deafening. Thomas recovered first. "We'll handle it. I know some doctors who can take care of the situation discreetly." "Take care of the—" Sarah's protective hands flew to her stomach. "This is your child. A child would complicate things unnecessarily," Victoria interjected. "We're prepared to be generous, Sarah. Sign the divorce papers, let us handle this pregnancy issue, and you'll be well taken care of." "There are other women, you know," Victoria added, examining her nails. "You're not the first wife Thomas has outgrown, though you've lasted longer than most." Sarah's shock turned to anger. "Other women? Other wives? Enough." Thomas slammed his hand on the desk. "Here's what's gonna happen. Tomorrow, my lawyers will present you with divorce papers. Sign them, take the settlement, and everyone wins. Fight me, and I'll destroy you." Who do you think the courts will believe? A respected businessman or an unstable teacher going through his private papers at midnight? "Those documents have my forged signature." "Prove it," Victoria smirked. "We have excellent lawyers, very expensive ones." Sarah's teaching salary flashed through her mind. She couldn't afford a legal battle against Thomas's millions. "Get out of my office." Thomas pointed to the door. "The papers will be ready in the morning. Make the smart choice, Sarah. Don't force me to ruin you." As Sarah walked past them, Victoria called out, "Oh, and Sarah, that necklace receipt you found? Thomas has excellent taste, doesn't he? It looks beautiful on me." Sarah fled to the guest room, locking the door behind her. As she curled up on the bed, her mind raced. She needed help. But who could stand against Thomas's money and power? Then she remembered a name she'd seen in the papers. Rebecca Morgan, a lawyer who specialized in complex divorce cases. Tomorrow, Sarah would fight back, for herself and for her baby. But first, she had to survive the night in a house with 2 people who wanted her gone. Rebecca Morgan's office wasn't what Sarah expected. No marble floors or fancy artwork, just a practical space filled with case files and law books. "So Thomas Harrison is your husband," Rebecca leaned forward. "I've been waiting for one of his wives to find me." "One of his wives?" "I've tracked 3 previous marriages. All ended the same way. Wives signed away everything after mysterious breakdowns or accidents." Rebecca's eyes hardened. 5 years ago, I was almost one of them." Sarah gasped. "You?" "I was a corporate lawyer at his firm. When I discovered his fraud schemes, he tried to destroy me. That's why I now specialize in cases like yours." Rebecca pulled out a file. "Thomas has a pattern. First, he isolates his wife. Then come the gaslighting and threats. Finally, an accident that makes her seem unstable." As if on cue, Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from the school principal. "Emergency meeting about your position. Come immediately." At Millbrook Elementary, Sarah found Thomas already there with the principal and school board. "Mrs. Harrison has been exhibiting concerning behavior," Thomas was saying. "Paranoid accusations, emotional outbursts, going through private documents at night." "That's not true," Sarah protested. "See?" Thomas gestured sadly. "These episodes are becoming more frequent. As her husband, I'm deeply worried." Parents she'd known for years avoided her eyes. Thomas had gotten to them first. Given the circumstances, the principal said, "We think it's best you take a leave of absence." You can't do this. I've taught here for 6 years. Please don't make a scene, Thomas whispered. Think of the baby. Sarah froze. It was a threat, not concern. Driving home, her car suddenly swerved. The mechanic found cut brake lines. Probably wear and tear, he said nervously, not meeting her eyes. That night, Rebecca called. Sarah, check your mail. Now. A thick envelope contained photos of Sarah at odd angles, taken without her knowledge. A note read, "Take the deal or worse things will happen." They're trying to scare you, Rebecca said. But we have an advantage. They don't know we've connected. I've been building a case against Thomas for years. With your help, we can finally bring him down. How? He has everyone fooled. Not everyone. Watch the Harrison mansion tomorrow. You'll see something interesting. The next day, Sarah noticed the elderly housekeeper, Rose, methodically cleaning every room, paying special attention to Thomas's office. Something about her movements seemed purposeful. Then Sarah spotted an elegant older woman watching the house from her car. When their eyes met, the woman pressed a finger to her lips and drove away. That evening, news broke. 3 of Thomas's elderly clients had lost their life savings in failed investments. The clients disappeared before they could be interviewed. Thomas stormed into Sarah's room. Your lawyer friend needs to back off. Now. I don't know what you're talking about. Parents are already questioning your stability. One wrong move, and you'll be declared unfit to teach, or to be a mother. He smiled coldly. Stress isn't good for pregnancies, Sarah. Anything could happen. After he left, Sarah called Rebecca. They're threatening my baby. I know, but we're not alone. That woman you saw? Margaret Harrison, Thomas's mother. She's been watching him for months. And Rose? Let's just say she's more than a housekeeper. Can they help us? They already are. But Sarah, this gets more dangerous from here. Thomas won't just threaten now, he'll act. Are you ready for that? Sarah placed a hand on her stomach. Her baby kicked, as if answering for her. I'm ready, whatever it takes. We found something big, Rebecca said, spreading documents across her desk. Thomas isn't just scamming his wives. He's running a massive fraud scheme targeting elderly investors. Sarah picked up a file. All these people lost their life savings? Hundreds of them. Thomas convinces seniors to invest their retirement funds in fake property developments. Victoria helps him move the money through shell companies. A commotion outside interrupted them. Rebecca's secretary rushed in. Someone broke into the office last night. All our security cameras were disabled. Rebecca checked her computer. They planted bugs everywhere. She wrote on a notepad, "We can't talk here. They're listening." Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from her doctor's office. Appointment canceled. Dr. Stevens no longer available. That's strange, Sarah said. He's been my doctor for years. Rebecca wrote another note. Thomas got to him. We need to find you a new doctor, one they can't bribe. On her way home, Sarah stopped at her bank. The teller looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Mrs. Harrison. Your accounts have been frozen due to an investigation into unusual activity. What unusual activity? Your husband reported potential mental health issues affecting your financial judgment. Sarah's hands shook as she called Rebecca. They've cut off my money. How am I supposed to pay for anything? Use this. Rebecca handed her a prepaid card. Don't let them track your expenses. At home, Sarah found Rose meticulously dusting Thomas's office. The housekeeper slipped her a note. Careful, they're watching you closely now. Sarah's phone rang. An unfamiliar voice. I'm working on a story about Thomas Harrison's investment schemes. We should talk. Before Sarah could respond, she heard a crash. The reporter's voice was replaced by static. The next day's news reported a fatal car accident. The victim, an investigative journalist working on a story about financial fraud. Victoria showed up unannounced. Such a tragedy about that reporter. Cars can be so dangerous when their brakes fail. She smiled. How are your brakes working, Sarah? Sarah found more diaries in the guest room closet. They belonged to Thomas's previous wives. Each told the same story, discovering fraud, fighting back, then accidents and breakdowns until they signed everything away. Rebecca texted, Don't react to anything you find. They're watching for your response. That night, Thomas entered her room. Dr. Stevens sent me your file. He's concerned about your mental state affecting the pregnancy. He recommends immediate psychiatric evaluation. You bought him off. Prove it. Thomas dropped commitment papers on her bed. Sign yourself involuntarily or I'll have you committed. Your choice. I'll fight you. With what money? What lawyer? What evidence? He laughed. Face it, Sarah, you've lost. After he left, Sarah noticed Rose was gone. The housekeeper's room was empty, closets cleared out. Her phone lit up with a news alert. Another elderly couple had lost their retirement to Harrison Investments. They were found in their garage, car running, doors closed. The police ruled it a suicide pact. Sarah's hands trembled as she texted Rebecca. Rose is gone. 2 more victims dead. What do we do? Rebecca replied, Don't panic. Rose's disappearance is part of the plan, but people are in real danger now. We need to move faster. Sarah stared at the commitment papers. Thomas could have her locked up at any moment. One signature from a doctor he'd bought and she'd lose everything, including her baby. But now she knew the truth was bigger than her divorce. People were dying. If she didn't stop Thomas, how many more lives would he destroy? Her phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Meet me at St. Mary's Church. Tomorrow, noon. Come alone. The sender's name appeared only as M.H. Margaret Harrison was ready to make her move. The church was empty when Sarah arrived, except for an elderly woman praying in the front pew. The woman turned, Martha Collins, one of Thomas's investors. I almost died last night. Martha's voice shook. After I lost everything to your husband, I took pills. My neighbor found me in time. Mrs. Collins, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Be angry. Margaret Harrison stepped out from behind a pillar. Martha's story isn't unique. My son has destroyed countless lives. Sarah clutched her stomach, suddenly dizzy. The baby had been moving less today. You need medical care, Margaret said sharply. I have a doctor who can't be bought. Let's go. The new doctor frowned at the ultrasound. Your stress levels are dangerous for the baby. You need bed rest. That's not possible, Sarah started, but doubled over in pain. The baby is in distress, the doctor warned. Choose rest or risk losing it. Margaret drove Sarah home. Thomas will use this against you. He'll claim you can't care for yourself or the baby. She was right. Within hours, Thomas filed an emergency petition for guardianship, citing Sarah's deteriorating mental and physical health. Victoria appeared at the courthouse, testifying about Sarah's unstable behavior at work. Parents from school backed her story, describing incidents that never happened. She once screamed at a child, one mother claimed. She's not fit to be around children, let alone have one. Sarah watched her reputation crumble. Everything she'd built, her career, her credibility, vanishing in carefully crafted lies. But something was off about Victoria. Her hands trembled when she testified. She avoided Sarah's eyes. Later, Rebecca found out why. Victoria's been talking to the DA's office. She knows Thomas will sacrifice her if things go wrong. She's looking for a deal. Can we trust her? No, but her fear is useful. Sarah's phone buzzed. A video of her at her doctor's appointment today. Message: pregnancy complications can be so unpredictable, accidents happen. Margaret's plan had better work fast. At home, Sarah found Rose back at work, looking different somehow. Professional, alert. She slipped Sarah a note before Thomas walked in. Why aren't you resting? He demanded. Doctor's orders. Since when do you care? I care about appearances. A dead baby would look bad for both of us. After he left, Sarah read Rose's note. Evidence secured, camera feeds looped, phase 1 complete. Rebecca called next. We found connections to state politicians. Thomas has been paying them to ignore complaints about his business. That explained why previous investigations disappeared. Victoria showed up unannounced again, but something was different. Her perfect facade was cracking. They found that journalist's body. Victoria's voice shook. Thomas said it was necessary, just business. But now, you're afraid you'll be next? Victoria flinched. I've seen his pattern. Wives, business partners, anyone who threatens him. They all disappear or get destroyed. I never thought. She stopped, hearing footsteps. Thomas entered. Victoria's mask returned instantly. Just updating Sarah on the court proceedings. Victoria smiled brightly, but Sarah had seen it, real fear in Victoria's eyes. That night, Margaret called. It's time for the next phase. But Sarah, it's dangerous. Thomas will retaliate harder than ever. People are dying, Sarah said. We have to stop him. Even if it costs you everything? Sarah touched her stomach, feeling her baby move. He's already trying to take everything. At least this way, we might save others. Good, Margaret said. Because Rose is ready to reveal who she really is, and Thomas won't see it coming. Sarah looked out her window at the Harrison mansion, where Thomas and Victoria were having another late business meeting. Soon they would learn. The real trap wasn't Sarah's divorce case. It was everything happening while they were distracted by it. Sarah sat in Margaret's study, staring at Rose's FBI badge. "You've been an undercover agent this whole time?" "Senior investigator, White-Collar Crimes Division," Rose said. "We've been building a case against Thomas for 3 years, but he's careful. We needed someone on the inside." "That's why you hired her." Sarah turned to Margaret. "Thomas stopped listening to me years ago," Margaret sighed. "But he never noticed the help. Classic Thomas, people who serve him are invisible." Rebecca spread photos across the desk. "Thomas is planning to leave the country, private jet booked to Dubai, no extradition. When? 3 days with Victoria." Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Victoria, "Need to meet. Alone? It's about Thomas's plans for your baby." "It's a trap," Rose warned. "Or she's really scared," Rebecca countered. "Our sources say she's been meeting with prosecutors." "Let me talk to her," Sarah said. "Absolutely not," Margaret snapped. "You're 8 months pregnant." "Exactly. She'll let her guard down around me, and we need her testimony." The local church was empty when Sarah arrived. Victoria paced near the altar. "Thomas is going to kill me," Victoria blurted. "Just like the others." "What others?" "His first wife didn't really die in our crash, or the second wife's accidental overdose. He planned it all." Victoria's hands shook. "I helped him. God forgive me, I helped him. Help us stop him. I'm testifying tomorrow. Full immunity deal." Victoria grabbed Sarah's arm. "But you need to run. He knows about the FBI investigation. He's going to eliminate loose ends before leaving." Sarah's phone rang. "Thomas, having a nice chat with Victoria?" His voice was ice. "Look outside." Men in dark suits surrounded the church. "Victoria, dear," Thomas's voice echoed as he entered the church. "Did you really think I wouldn't have you followed?" Victoria ran. Thomas's men caught her at the door. "Take her to the house," Thomas ordered. "Sarah and I need to talk." Alone in the church, Thomas smiled at his wife. "You've been busy. FBI agents, secret meetings, my own mother conspiring against me." "It's over, Thomas. Victoria's testimony. Victoria won't be testifying tomorrow, or ever." He touched her stomach. "Such a shame about the baby. Stress-induced complications are so common. Don't threaten my child. Sign the divorce papers, take the deal, live a long, healthy life with your baby. Fight me." He shrugged. "Well, pregnancies can be fragile." Sarah's phone buzzed quietly. A text from Rose. "Stall him. Team in position." "You'll never get away with this," Sarah said loudly. "I already have, 6 times. He grabbed her arm. "Now let's get you home before something unfortunate happens." The church doors burst open. FBI agents poured in. But Thomas was gone. A back door swung in the wind. "Victoria's missing too," Rose reported. "His men took her." "He'll kill her," Sarah said. "No, he won't," Margaret entered, grim-faced. "He needs her to access the offshore accounts. But once they leave the country—" Sarah's phone lit up. A video of Victoria tied to a chair in what looked like a basement. "Final chance," Thomas's message read. "Sign the papers by midnight or Victoria dies. Fight me, your baby's next." "He's panicking," Rose said, "making mistakes. But he's also most dangerous now," Margaret warned. Sarah felt a sharp pain. The baby kicked hard. "Hospital. Now," Margaret ordered. "But Victoria, let Rose handle it. You're in labor." Sarah looked at the church altar. "Please God, protect my baby, and forgive me for what we have to do next." Because Sarah knew the only way to beat Thomas was to make him think he'd won, even if it meant sacrificing Victoria to catch him. "The papers are signed," Sarah told Thomas over the phone from her hospital bed. "You win. Just don't hurt Victoria." "Smart choice. I'll have my lawyer bring your settlement check." Rose traced the call. "Got him. Old Warehouse District." "Victoria's definitely there," Rebecca added. "Security cameras caught them entering." "FBI teams are in position," Rose said. "But we have another problem. Thomas transferred everything to accounts in Dubai this morning." Margaret checked her phone. "My banking contacts confirm it. $200 million, gone. He's going to run with the money and kill Victoria anyway." Sarah winced through a contraction. "Not if we move now." Rose grabbed her gear. "Stay in the hospital. Keep him thinking he's won." Sarah's doctor entered. "Blood pressure's too high. We need to prep for emergency C-section." Not yet, Sarah pleaded, just a little longer. Her phone buzzed, a video of Victoria, bloody and terrified. See what fighting me costs? Thomas's voice narrated. But you made the right choice in the end. Goodbye, Sarah. Rose's team stormed the warehouse, empty. He knew we were coming, Rose cursed. Wait, there's a laptop, still logged in. Rebecca remotely accessed the files. Got his real flight plan, not Dubai. Private airstrip, 2 hours from here, taking off in 40 minutes. That's not enough time, Margaret said. Yes, it is. Sarah pushed herself up, because he's gonna let us catch him. Sarah, the baby. We'll have to wait. She grabbed her phone, dialed Thomas. What now? He answered, annoyed. You forgot something. The thumb drive Victoria kept as insurance. The one with evidence of every crime you've committed for the past 10 years. Silence. She gave it to me, Sarah continued. For safety. You can have it when you let her go. You're lying. Summit Drive Storage Unit 23. In a red box marked School Records. Get it before your flight. Thomas hung up. There is no thumb drive, Sarah told the others. But he'll have to check, Rose smiled. Unit 23 is under surveillance. Teams are ready. Sarah doubled over. Baby's coming. Get her to surgery, the doctor ordered. Wait, Sarah grabbed Rose's arm. Victoria had a phone, they didn't take it. Track it. Rose's fingers flew over her laptop. Signals active. Different warehouse. Sending teams now. Thomas will have men guarding her, Margaret warned. That's why I'm going personally. Rose checked her weapon. No one hurts my witness. Sarah's phone lit up. Thomas was at the storage unit. But something was wrong. He's not alone, Rebecca reported. And they're heavily armed. It's a trap, Sarah realized. He's using the storage unit to ambush the FBI. Rose redirected teams to the storage facility. Stay alive, she told Sarah. I want to meet my honorary grandchild. The doctor wheeled Sarah to surgery. Thomas's men found our surveillance teams, Margaret reported. Gunfight at the storage unit. Sarah's vision blurred as the anesthesia hit. Victoria's secured. Rose's voice crackled through Margaret's phone, but Thomas slipped away. He's headed to the airstrip. The money, Sarah mumbled as she lost consciousness. Check his mother's foundation. She woke to beeping machines. Margaret sat nearby. The baby? Still in there. We stopped the labor, but you need to stay calm. Thomas? Got cocky. Tried to transfer the money one last time. That's when we had him. What do you mean? Margaret smiled. You were right about my foundation. When he tried to move the money, my banking friends froze everything. He's trapped. No cash, no escape plane, and FBI closing in. Victoria? Safe and very chatty with prosecutors. Sarah's phone buzzed one last time. Thomas. You played me, he sounded desperate. All of it. The divorce, the baby, Victoria. You're not the weak little teacher I married. No, Sarah agreed. I'm much more dangerous. I'm a mother protecting her child. Police sirens wailed in the background of Thomas's call. Goodbye, Thomas. Sarah hung up as agents swarmed his location. The baby kicked, strong and steady. They had won. But Sarah's ordeal wasn't over. It was time for the trial, and Thomas still had one last card to play. The courthouse buzzed with tension on the first day of Thomas's divorce hearing. Criminal charges would come later, but this was Sarah's chance to reclaim her life. Remember, Rebecca whispered, he doesn't know about our surprise witnesses. Let him think he's winning. Thomas sat with his new legal team, looking confident despite his recent arrest. He'd made bail thanks to connections that even Margaret couldn't block. All rise, the bailiff called. Thomas's lawyer painted Sarah as unstable and money-hungry. My client built his empire through hard work. Mrs. Harrison married him when he was poor, yes, but tried to destroy him once he found success. Sarah watched as former colleagues testified about her erratic behavior at school. She would talk to herself, one teacher claimed, make wild accusations. Objection, Rebecca stood. These witnesses were paid to testify. Speculation, Thomas's lawyer countered. Overruled. The judge said, continue. Victoria sat in the back, flanked by FBI agents. Her testimony would come later in the criminal trial. Today was about the divorce. I have proof, Thomas's lawyer announced, that Mrs. Harrison attempted to embezzle funds from Harrison Investments. He presented documents showing transfers from company accounts to ones in Sarah's name. That's not my signature, Sarah protested. We have bank video showing you making these transactions. Rebecca smiled. Play the video. The footage showed Sarah at the bank, but Rose had already proven it was doctored. Your Honor, Rebecca stood. I call our first witness. A bank manager approached the stand. She explained how Thomas had bribed bank employees to fake footage and backdate transactions. Thomas's smile faltered. Next witness. A document expert demonstrated how Sarah's signatures were forged. Thomas whispered urgently to his lawyer. Final witness for today. Pastor Michael Andrews took the stand. He'd counseled them early in their marriage. Thomas confessed something to me, the pastor said. He said once he got rich, he'd dump the small-town teacher who helped him get there. Said she was just a stepping stone. Objection. Privileged conversation. Mr. Harrison waived privilege when he bragged about this plan to others. Rebecca produced affidavits. The pastor isn't the only one who heard it. Thomas stood up. This is a circus. These people are lying. Sit down, Mr. Harrison, the judge warned. Sarah felt the baby kick as Thomas lost his composure. You think you've won? He hissed during a break. I still have friends in high places. One call and you'll never see our child. But Sarah saw fear in his eyes. His perfect plan was crumbling. Victoria approached Sarah in the bathroom. He's planning something. I heard him on the phone last night. Something about taking care of loose ends before the criminal trial. Back in court, Thomas's lawyer tried damage control. My client's success made him a target. His wife conspired with his mother and employee to steal his fortune. Is that why you killed your previous wives? The question came from the back of the courtroom. Rose stood up, no longer in disguise. FBI Special Agent Rose Martinez. I've spent 3 years investigating the mysterious deaths of Thomas Harrison's ex-wives. Thomas lunged for the door. Federal marshals blocked his way. This is a divorce hearing, his lawyer protested. Agent Martinez's testimony isn't relevant. It becomes relevant, the judge said, when death threats are made in my courthouse. Sarah touched her stomach as the baby kicked again. Stronger this time. Court will reconvene tomorrow, the judge announced. Mr. Harrison, consider your bail revoked. Threats against a pregnant woman in my courtroom? Not happening. As marshals led Thomas away, he locked eyes with Sarah. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Margaret stepped forward. Because tomorrow, Thomas, your mother takes the stand. For the first time, Sarah saw real fear in Thomas's face. Because tomorrow, Margaret would reveal the truth that would destroy him completely, a truth even Victoria didn't know. The courtroom fell silent as Margaret Harrison took the stand. Thomas sat between his lawyers, his usual confidence replaced by visible anxiety. Mrs. Harrison, Rebecca began, when did you first suspect your son's criminal activities? When his first wife died. Margaret's voice was firm. The police called it an accident, but I found letters she'd written about discovering fraudulent accounts. Objection. Thomas's lawyer jumped up. Previous marriages aren't relevant. They become relevant, the judge ruled, when establishing a pattern of behavior. Continue. After his second wife's overdose, Margaret continued, I hired private investigators. They uncovered a pattern of fraud, identity theft, and violence stretching back 15 years. Thomas whispered frantically to his lawyers. 3 weeks ago, Margaret said, I found proof that Thomas had arranged both deaths, bank transfers to hired killers, evidence his wives were going to expose him. The courtroom erupted. The judge hammered his gavel. I have documentation. Margaret held up a file. Everything is here. Thomas stood up. She's lying. This is a conspiracy to steal my company. Sit down, Mr. Harrison, the judge ordered, or I'll have you removed. Sarah felt a sharp pain. The baby was coming. She gripped Rebecca's arm, but shook her head when Rebecca looked concerned. Not yet. They had to finish this. Mrs. Harrison, Rebecca continued, what made you take action now? When I learned Sarah was pregnant, I knew Thomas would follow his pattern. He'd already killed to protect his secrets. I couldn't let another innocent die. Victoria burst into the courtroom. He's going to kill me next. I just found this in my hotel room. She handed the bailiff a phone. On it, a message from Thomas. Loose ends get tied up, tonight. Federal marshals moved to surround Thomas. This is ridiculous, Thomas shouted. You can't believe these women. Actually, Rose stood up. We have your hitman in custody. He's very cooperative. Thomas made a break for the door. Marshals tackled him. I have one more piece of evidence, Margaret announced. She pulled out an old notebook. Thomas's father didn't die of natural causes. I found this diary detailing how Thomas tampered with his heart medication. He killed his own father to inherit the seed money for his company. The courtroom went dead silent. Thomas stopped struggling against the marshals. His face turned white. "You knew?" he whispered. "All this time?" "I've known everything, son. I waited and watched, gathering evidence, protecting your victims when I could. Sarah wasn't just your wife, she was my chance to finally stop you." Sarah doubled over as another contraction hit. This time, she couldn't hide it. "Your Honor," Rebecca said urgently, "my client needs medical attention." "She's faking," Thomas yelled, "like she faked everything else." Sarah's water broke. The judge acted quickly. "This court finds in favor of Mrs. Sarah Harrison. Full dissolution of marriage, with all assets to be split according to state law. Mr. Harrison, you'll remain in custody pending criminal charges." As paramedics helped Sarah onto a stretcher, Thomas broke free from the marshals. "You ruined everything." He lunged toward her. Rose moved faster. She tackled Thomas, cuffing him as he hit the ground. "Thomas Harrison," she read his rights, "you're under arrest for murder, conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder." Victoria stepped forward. "And I'm testifying about everything." Margaret followed the paramedics out. "I'll meet you at the hospital. Your baby won't be born alone." Sarah grabbed Rebecca's hand. "We did it." "Yes," Rebecca smiled. "Now let's go bring your baby into a world where its father can never hurt anyone again." As they wheeled her out, Sarah heard Thomas screaming threats, but for the first time she felt no fear. The truth had finally come out, and her baby would be born free from Thomas's shadow. "Push Sarah," the doctor urged. "The baby's almost here." Margaret held Sarah's hand while Rose stood guard at the door, still in her FBI gear. After Thomas's courthouse outburst, they weren't taking chances. "It's a boy," the doctor announced moments later. Sarah's son's first cry filled the room just as Rebecca burst in with news. Thomas's bail was officially revoked. He's in federal custody. "Perfect timing, little one." Margaret smiled at her grandson. "You waited until your mother won." Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Testified to everything. Witness protection program tomorrow. Thank you for saving my life." Outside the hospital, reporters gathered. The story had exploded. Prominent businessman's empire revealed as criminal conspiracy. His own mother helped bring him down. "We've identified more victims," Rose reported. "Elderly couples who lost everything. Some committed suicide. Thomas will face multiple murder charges." "The other wives' families?" Sarah asked, cradling her son. "Finally getting closure," Rebecca said. Thomas's hitman gave detailed confessions. A nurse brought in a TV at Sarah's request. The news showed Thomas being led into prison. Harrison Investments CEO faces life sentence. Multiple murders, massive fraud scheme targeting elderly victims, ex-wife's courtroom delivery marks end of dynasty. Sarah turned it off when her son stirred. "He looks nothing like Thomas," Margaret observed. "He has your eyes." "And your strength," Rose added. Rebecca handled calls from prosecutors. More charges kept coming as victims came forward. "Thomas's political connections are falling," she reported. "They're all turning on him to save themselves." Pastor Andrews visited, bringing the church's prayers and support. "Your story gives hope to others trapped in abusive situations." That evening, Detective Wilson arrived. "Mrs. Harrison, we need to talk about the prison incident." "What incident?" Margaret demanded. "Thomas tried to escape during processing, attacked 2 guards. He was shouting about getting to the baby." Sarah held her son tighter. "Don't worry," Rose assured them. "He's in maximum security now. No privileges, no contacts." "Actually," Detective Wilson said, "he's in the prison infirmary. Apparently some inmates don't like men who murder their wives and target the elderly." Sarah's phone lit up with support messages from her school community. The truth about Thomas's manipulation had come out. Her teaching position was reinstated with back pay. The FBI found more offshore accounts, Rose updated them. "Everything's being frozen. The money will go to victim restitution." "Including Thomas's first victims," Rebecca added. "The families of his previous wives will finally see justice." Margaret handled the press, turning attention to the victims' now recovery fund she'd established. "This isn't about scandal," she told reporters. "It's about justice and helping those my son harmed." Sarah watched her son sleep in the hospital bassinet. He represented everything good that had come from this nightmare. New life, fresh starts, hope. "What will you name him?" Pastor Andrews asked. "Daniel," Sarah decided. "It means God is my judge." Because in the end, justice came through faith and truth. Rose got an urgent call. Thomas was found unconscious in his cell. He left a confession letter. Is he alive? But barely. The letter admits everything: the murders, the fraud, his father's death. God's justice, Pastor Andrews said quietly. Margaret took her grandson in her arms. Your father can never hurt anyone again. You'll grow up knowing only love and truth. Sarah looked at the faces around her. Margaret's wisdom, Rose's strength, Rebecca's determination, Pastor Andrews' compassion. Her son would have amazing role models. The Church Relief Fund has raised thousands, the pastor reported. People want to help Thomas's victims rebuild. That's the real American dream, Sarah said. Not wealth built on lies, but communities coming together to help others. Her son opened his eyes, seeing his new family for the first time. A family built on love, truth, and justice. Far stronger than anything Thomas's money could buy. 6 months after Daniel's birth, Sarah stood before a room full of women at the newly established Harrison Foundation for Survivor Support. Each of you has a story similar to mine, she addressed the group. You trusted someone who betrayed that trust. Today we start rebuilding. The foundation, funded by recovered assets from Thomas's empire, had already helped 50 women escape abusive situations and financial fraud. We've secured legal aid for everyone, Rebecca announced. No one fights alone anymore. Rose, now the foundation's head of investigations, brought up case files on the screen. These are active fraud schemes we're tracking. Thanks to your reports, we've identified 3 more operations like Thomas's. Margaret handled the foundation's finances, ensuring every dollar went to survivor support. Thomas's political friends are falling like dominoes. Their victims are coming forward. A letter arrived from Victoria in witness protection. More evidence discovered. Storage unit in Thomas's brother's name, sending coordinates. Rose dispatched a team immediately. His brother vanished last year. Now we might know why. Sarah returned to teaching, but now as the school's new principal. The board had unanimously appointed her after the truth about Thomas's manipulation emerged. The kids miss you in the classroom, a teacher told her. But you're changing more lives in this role. The foundation's hotline rang constantly. Word had spread, there was finally a place victims could turn to. Thomas tried reaching out again, Rebecca reported, wanted to make a deal. From his prison hospital bed, Thomas had attempted one last manipulation, offering additional evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence. He claims he has proof of other conspiracies, Rose said, but he'll only talk to Sarah. No, Margaret was firm. He's trying to regain control. We'll find the evidence ourselves. Sarah focused on Daniel, who was beginning to crawl. He brought joy to everyone at the foundation, a symbol of new beginnings. The church became a key partner, offering counseling and support groups. Pastor Andrews helped survivors rebuild their faith after betrayal. Today's sermon is about restoration, he told his congregation. Look at Sarah's story. Evil tried to destroy her, but God turned it into a mission to help others. A surprise visit from Detective Wilson brought news. Thomas tried bribing a guard to get a message to Daniel. The guard reported it immediately. What was the message? Sarah asked. Just more manipulation. He wanted Daniel to know his real father isn't the monster people claim. Daniel's real family is right here, Margaret said, watching her grandson play. Rose's team made another breakthrough. We found Thomas's brother. He didn't vanish. Thomas had him committed to a mental institution under a false name. Why? Sarah wondered. Because he witnessed the first wife's murder, Rose explained. We're getting him proper care now. The foundation launched a public awareness campaign. Billboards across the state warned about investment fraud targeting the elderly. Calls are increasing, Rebecca reported. People are finally spotting the warning signs we highlight. Sarah received an award for her advocacy work, but she deflected the attention to the survivors. They're the heroes. They're brave enough to come forward and help others. Victoria's testimony led to more arrests. 3 judges and a state senator faced corruption charges for helping Thomas hide his crimes. The whole network is unraveling, Rose said. Victoria's information was the key. Margaret expanded the foundation's services, adding job training and financial literacy programs. We don't just rescue people, we give them tools for independence. Sarah held Daniel as she reviewed the Foundation's latest success stories. Women finding their strength, families rebuilding, justice being served. Your father thought power came from hurting others, she told her son. But real power comes from helping them heal. The Foundation's work was far from over, but every day brought new hope, new survivors finding their voice, new chances to turn pain into purpose. Thomas's empire of lies had crumbled. In its place stood something far stronger, a community of survivors helping others rise from the ashes. 1 year after Daniel's birth, the Grand Plaza Hotel's ballroom was filled to capacity for the National Women's Support Association annual awards ceremony. Today's Woman of the Year built more than a foundation, the host announced. She created a movement that's changing lives across America. Please welcome Sarah Harrison. As Sarah approached the podium, carrying Daniel, she saw the faces that had become her true family. Margaret beamed from the front row, sitting beside Rose, who had traded her FBI gear for a formal dress. Rebecca sat with a group of survivors they'd helped, while Pastor Andrews led a delegation from the church support group. "A year ago I was fighting for my life and my child's future," Sarah began. "Today, the Harrison Foundation has helped over 1,000 women reclaim their lives from abuse and fraud. But I'm not the hero of this story. They are." She gestured to the survivors in attendance. These women had the courage to come forward, to share their stories, to help others spot the warning signs. They turned their pain into purpose. The screen behind her showed the Foundation's achievements. 300 successful prosecutions, $5 million in recovered assets, support groups in 20 states, and a new law passing through Congress. The Harrison Act, strengthening protections for fraud victims. "Thomas Harrison thought he could silence us," Sarah continued. "He didn't expect us to find strength in each other, to turn his weapons, money and power, into tools for healing." Victoria appeared on screen via secure video link from Witness Protection. Her testimony had proven invaluable, leading to dozens of additional arrests. "Sarah showed me it's never too late to choose truth over comfort, to fight for what's right." Detective Wilson took the stage next, sharing updates on the criminal cases. Thomas had been sentenced to multiple life terms. His appeals had failed. His political allies faced their own trials. The corrupt network he'd built was dismantled. "But prosecution isn't enough," Sarah resumed. "We needed to help survivors rebuild. That's why the Foundation offers more than legal aid. We provide job training, counseling, financial education, everything needed for a fresh start." Margaret joined her at the podium. "When I discovered my son's crimes, I thought my family legacy would be shame. Sarah showed me it could be redemption instead." Rose presented the Foundation's new initiative, a nationwide fraud prevention program. "We've trained bank employees, social workers, and clergy to spot warning signs. Predators like Thomas can't hide anymore." Rebecca outlined the legal victories, precedents set, laws changed, victims compensated. The justice system is finally working for survivors, not against them. Pastor Andrews spoke about healing. "Sarah's story reminds us that faith and community can overcome evil, that forgiveness doesn't mean accepting abuse, but freeing yourself to help others." The Foundation's hotline numbers appeared on screen. They now operated 24/7 in multiple languages. Every day, more survivors reached out for help. "This award belongs to everyone who refused to be silenced," Sarah said. "To every survivor who shared their story, to every volunteer who answered a midnight call, to every donor who helped a family start over." Daniel, now walking, toddled over to Margaret. 3 generations united by truth and justice, not blood and lies. A survivor named Mary took the microphone. She'd lost her retirement to one of Thomas's schemes, attempted suicide, but found hope through the Foundation. Today, she counseled other victims. "Sarah didn't just save lives," Mary said. "She showed us how to save ourselves." The Foundation's new training center would open next month, offering free courses in financial literacy and job skills. Named after Thomas's first wife, it would stand as a monument to survival and renewal. Victoria's testimony had led to an unexpected discovery: offshore accounts holding millions in stolen funds. Every dollar would go to victim restitution and Foundation programs. "The American dream isn't about getting rich," Sarah concluded. "It's about building something meaningful, about turning tragedy into triumph." about helping others claim their piece of that dream. She looked at Daniel, playing happily with his grandmother. My son will grow up knowing that true wealth comes from integrity, not fraud. That real power means lifting others up, not pushing them down. The foundation's success stories played on screen, women graduating from training programs, families reunited, survivors becoming advocates. Each one represented a life transformed. Thomas's brother, recovered from the institution where Thomas had hidden him, now helped the foundation identify other victims. His testimony had solved 3 cold cases. "A year ago, I thought I was alone," Sarah said. "Today, I stand with an army of survivors. Together, we're rewriting our stories. Together, we're building a future where justice prevails and truth wins." Rose announced new FBI partnerships. The foundation's model would be replicated nationwide. Their data had already prevented millions in fraud attempts. Rebecca shared plans for international expansion. Survivors in other countries had reached out, seeking help building similar programs. "This isn't just an American story anymore," she said. "It's becoming a global movement for justice." The Foundation's scholarship program, funding education for survivors' children, had already helped 50 kids start college. Daniel would have classmates whose parents had overcome similar battles. "The true measure of our success isn't in numbers," Sarah concluded. "It's in the light returning to survivors' eyes, the hope replacing fear, the strength found in unity." As she finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. Daniel clapped too, not understanding yet how his birth had sparked a revolution of hope. Margaret hugged her grandson, whispering, "Your mother did what I couldn't. She turned our family name from a symbol of corruption into a beacon of justice." Pastor Andrews led a prayer of thanksgiving. The church bells rang, as if heaven itself celebrated this triumph of good over evil. Sarah looked out at her extended family, survivors, advocates, supporters, all united in the mission to help others heal. This was her real inheritance, worth more than all of Thomas's millions. "The Foundation's work will never end," she told the crowd. "As long as there are predators like Thomas, we'll be here. Fighting, supporting, rebuilding. This is our promise to every survivor. You are not alone. Your story matters. Together, we rise." Daniel reached for his mother. Sarah held him close, grateful that her son would grow up surrounded by examples of courage, integrity, and love. This was the true American dream. Not wealth built on lies, but legacy built on truth. Not power over others, but strength through unity. Not success at any cost, but victory through justice. The Foundation's motto appeared on screen, from survival to strength. Sarah's nightmare had become a mission. Her pain had become purpose. Her story had become hope for thousands. And somewhere in his prison cell, Thomas Harrison would know. His greatest mistake was underestimating the power of one woman's courage to change the world. The evening concluded with an unexpected announcement from Margaret. "In honor of tonight's award, I'm doubling the Foundation's endowment. Every dollar Thomas stole will help twice as many survivors." The crowd cheered, but Sarah noticed a commotion at the back of the ballroom. Detective Wilson was urgently signaling Rose. "Thomas tried to commit suicide," Rose whispered after taking the call. "Left another confession. This one's different." Sarah handed Daniel to Margaret and followed Rose to a private room. The confession revealed a deeper web of crimes. Political bribes stretching back decades, connections to international fraud rings, and most shockingly, evidence that Thomas's father had been involved from the beginning. "He wasn't just my father's killer," Margaret said, reading the letter. "He was continuing my father's legacy of corruption. I thought I'd failed as a mother, but the rot in our family went back generations. Until you broke the chain," Sarah squeezed her hand. "You chose truth over family loyalty. The news media would explode with these revelations tomorrow, but tonight belonged to the survivors." Sarah returned to the ballroom, where women were sharing their stories of transformation. One elderly couple had lost their home to Thomas's schemes. Now they ran the Foundation's senior outreach program, helping other retirees avoid fraud. Their work had already saved millions in retirement funds. Victoria's video feed returned with breaking news. Her testimony had helped federal agents track down Thomas's international partners. Simultaneous raids were happening across 3 continents. "The whole global network is falling," Rose confirmed. "Thomas was just one piece. of a much bigger operation. Rebecca outlined the legal implications. With these new revelations, we can help survivors in other countries. The Foundation's model will go international. Pastor Andrews shared his own revelation. Thomas's first wife came to me for counseling, but I didn't see the signs. Now our clergy training program ensures no victim's cry for help goes unheard. The Foundation's new advocacy program was already changing laws. 3 states had passed Sarah's Law, requiring stricter oversight of investment firms and stronger protections for elderly clients. Daniel, tired from the excitement, fell asleep in Margaret's arms. Looking at him, Sarah realized her son would never know his father, but he would know something far more valuable: the truth about courage and justice. The Foundation's youth program, inspired by Sarah's teaching background, was teaching high school students about financial literacy and healthy relationships. "We're breaking the cycle before it begins," Sarah explained. Rose's FBI task force had become a model for other agencies. "We don't just catch predators anymore," she said. "We prevent them from destroying lives in the first place." As the evening wound down, survivors gathered around Sarah, sharing their hopes for the future. One woman was starting law school, inspired by Rebecca's example. Another had opened a shelter for abuse victims. Each story built on the last, creating a tapestry of transformation. The Foundation's next project was already underway: a research center studying patterns of financial abuse and developing prevention strategies. "Knowledge is power," Sarah told the crowd. "The more we understand these crimes, the better we can fight them." Margaret announced one final surprise. The Harrison Mansion, once a symbol of Thomas's corruption, would become the Foundation's new headquarters. We're turning a house built on lies into a home for truth and healing. As Sarah prepared to leave, carrying her sleeping son, she saw something that made her pause. Among the crowd was Thomas's brother, now recovered and working as a Foundation volunteer. He was talking to one of Thomas's former associates, not in anger but with compassion, sharing his own journey from victim to advocate. "That's the real victory," Rose observed. "Not just stopping the predators, but helping their victims become heroes." The Foundation's success had sparked a national conversation about wealth, power, and responsibility. Business schools now use Sarah's story to teach ethics. Law enforcement agencies studied the case to improve victim response. But for Sarah, success wasn't measured in headlines or awards. It was measured in the quiet moments: a survivor's first smile of hope, a family rebuilding their dreams, a community coming together to protect its vulnerable members. As she left the ballroom, Sarah saw her reflection in the window. The scared teacher who had discovered her husband's betrayal was gone. In her place stood a warrior for justice, a mother, a leader who had turned personal tragedy into universal triumph. Daniel stirred in her arms and Sarah kissed his forehead. "Sweet dreams, my boy," she whispered. "Tomorrow we continue our work, building a world where truth always defeats lies, where courage overcomes fear, and where love conquers greed." The night sky over the city seemed brighter somehow, as if the stars themselves were celebrating this victory of light over darkness, of justice over corruption, of ordinary people joining together to create extraordinary change. Sarah's American dream hadn't been about wealth or power. It had been about something far more precious: the chance to make a difference, to help others, to leave the world better than she found it. And as she drove home with her son and her chosen family, Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. The Foundation's work would continue, touching more lives, spreading more hope, creating more change, because sometimes the greatest dreams aren't about what we gain, but about what we give. Not about what we own, but about who we become. And Sarah Harrison had become exactly who she was meant to be: a beacon of hope, a voice for justice, and living proof that one person's courage can change countless lives. The true American dream wasn't waiting in a mansion or a bank account. It was right here in the power of truth, the strength of community, and the triumph of the human spirit. That was a legacy worth building. That was a story worth telling. That was a dream worth fighting for. And somewhere in his prison cell, Thomas Harrison would have to live with the knowledge that his attempt to destroy one woman had instead empowered thousands to reclaim their lives, their dignity, and their dreams. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Sarah's shoes? Have you or someone you know experienced a similar situation? Your story matters, and your voice deserves to be heard. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of courage, justice, and triumph over adversity. Remember, sometimes our deepest wounds become our greatest source of strength to help others heal.